Hey everyone, welcome to the panel. My name is Chappie. I'm executive director of the AI Collective. If you don't already know what the AI Collective is, we are the world's largest and most passionate AI community. Since we started 3 years ago, our nonprofit grassroots community has expanded to over 100,000 members across 100 chapters in 30 countries globally. Our mission is simple but vital. We gather pioneers on the frontier of AI, that's founders, researchers, investors, and operators, to exchange insights, deepen our human connection, and drive collective progress. We believe that AI is a civilizational turning point, and it's so much more than just about the technology. It's about how we steer society towards trust, openness, and human flourishing. So today, we are applying that lens to the most heated debate in Silicon Valley right now, which is the future of work. AI is really forcing us to choose between two different futures. And one, ambition supercharges the 996 hustle culture and unlocks relentless ambition. I like to call it permanent founder mode. On the other side, this technology returns time to us, which unlocks the 4-day work week, deeper creativity, and hopefully very purpose led lives. Now, a little personal context for me is I've been a builder my whole life, and I've done intense startup sprints and worked at Apple, and I just love the grind. But I often find myself wrestling with this massive question that is, in the age of infinite automation, is there a future where work is less about who we are and we can find something else that gives us more purpose? So we want this session to be interactive. At any time, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I will be taking a look at that. I'll be monitoring it, and we'll have a dedicated 10 to 15-minute section at the very end to answer all of them. So I'm going to start with doing a quick round of introductions for all the panelists. Panelists, if you could just give a quick wave as I read your name off. So first we have Nick Bloom, who is a professor of economics at Stanford. He is the global authority of remote work and management practices. If you've read a headline about work from home productivity in the last 5 years, it's probably based on his data. Second, we have Wen Sang, who is the co-founder and CEO of GenSpark. He is living in this age of acceleration and has helped scale GenSpark from 0 to 50 million ARR in just 5 months using agents. Then we have Aristia Kinnis, who is the director of strategy and partnerships at Open Research. She is leading critical work on UBI and researching how direct cash and AI impact human flourishing. Finally, we have Mario Vasilescu, who is the CEO of Readocracy and a Brain Trust member at XPRIZE. He is building the Fitbit for knowledge to ensure that in the age of AI and abundance, we have human attention and agency. Okay, so I'm going to go around and lead off with some questions for the panel. We're going to have it be 25 minutes, so make sure panelists are keeping your answers short and to the point, and then we'll kind of open it up. So let's dive straight into the elephant in the room, which is the question in Silicon Valley right now. On one side, we have the 996 culture, which allows us to move faster and win in this age of super cycles. And for those who are uninitiated, 996 is 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. And on the opposing side, argues that this AI as a tool finally allows us to slow down and adopt the 4-day work week, much like with the Industrial Revolution, Henry Ford, and the 5-day work week. So Wen, let's start with you, okay? So you've got the reality on the ground. You've just hyperscaled a company to 50 million ARR in the last 5 months. Is the future of work simply about speed? Does AI allow people to move faster, or give us a sense of boots on the ground?
Absolutely, Chappie. And again, thank you for the opportunity to connect with everybody here. So the way we look at the world is that we are experiencing this major shift, fundamental shift. In the past, human beings are at the center of production. We are the production engine. We have to spend hours to do work hands-on. Now, with this new wave of AI breakthroughs, what we're seeing is you no longer have to be there just every second. You essentially command your, for example, GenSpark Super Agent to, build your presentation, craft a financial model, and get an investment memo written. You make sure your requirements are clear. And then the AI agents would just run around and then do work for you. And then on the other hand, you tell your agent if you're satisfied with the results, how you wanted to tweak it. It's like working with a fleet of, super competent Goldman Sachs analysts in your pocket. Now, with that, I would say 996 or 5-day work week. This was weeks ago. We talked about 3-day work week. Okay. Vibe working with GenSpark, you got a 3-day work week. So my view on that is, look, everybody's different. The key here is through this, new wave of AI technologies, you can get freedom, a lot more freedom. you can get more optionality. You can decide if you wanted to go 996 or 24/7, and you can also decide if you wanted to just, lay back and then take it easy. That is all completely up to you. But you no longer have to feel like I have to work. That is the most important thing. So we wanted to, just help create more freedom for everybody. That is what I say.
I love it.
Is
I love it. So that's the boots on the ground in one particular example. Nick, I'd love for you to step back and kind of give us a sense of the macro data here.
Yeah, so when paints a very impressive and great picture on AI, I'm saying economists spend an enormous amount of time talking about this, what the impact is. I take the data. So far, this only goes up to the second quarter of this year. We haven't seen any acceleration in GDP. Now, the other thing to point out is we've seen incredible technologies over the past, and think of the steam engine, the electric motor, computers, the internet, cell phones, etc. Traditionally, these things have what's called a J curve. So if you look back, we've studied, 10, 15 technologies. Initially, they don't really help because it takes a few years to reorganize stuff, and in the long run, you really take off. So AI clearly is massively positive in the long run, which is kind of 5, 10 years. I think the big debate is what's the impact here and now. I don't want to be too pessimistic because this time may be different. And the AI is pretty unique and pretty radically different. But if we look at technologies we've seen in history, they tend to take longer than 25, 26, 27 to come out. So I would say from folks I've talked to, and I live in Silicon Valley, there's roughly a 50-50 split. So 50% that say AI is going to be amazing, but you ain't going to see anything till 2030, 2035. And there's 50% that you're seeing it here and now. For what it's worth, when I spoke to the IMF folks, they are pretty positive on US growth next year. And you're going to ask my Goldman Sachs analysts in my pockets, see what they have to say about it. But it's clearly positive. The question is when, and is it this year or 5 years from now? My suspicion is it's not quite this year, but 2-3 years we'll start to see a pretty rapid takeoff.
That's great. And Aristia or Mario, anything you'd like to add to either of those 2 points there? Okay, awesome. Nick, anything else you want to mention about macro data and specifically what you're seeing in terms of use of AI tools and also maybe remote work as well? I know you've done work there.
Yeah, I make 2 quick comments. Remote work, the debate seems to kind of moved into the rear window. At this point, we were talking at the panel beforehand, it's kind of settled down. Some firms are RTOing, others aren't. We have about 4 times as much remote work as we did in 2019, but it's half what it is in 2020. So look, it's midway. And there are some firms that are fully remote, a bunch that are hybrid, and a bunch are fully in person. It's kind of stable at this point. On Wednesday, the 996 debate is super interesting. So I've done like a huge number of exec eds talking to boards over the last 4 or 5 years. And everyone used to ask me in 2022, on the 4-day week. I'm not sure I get asked much about the 3-day week. That sounds even better, but I got asked a lot about the 4-day week. That discussion's kind of died. Now I'm hearing all about 996. So certainly the feeling and vibe in the Valley is it's moving to 996. And that's probably mentioned, 5 to 10 times as much as the 4-day week at this point.
I did actually want to add one thing. Actually, you go first.
Go ahead, Mario, please.
I just wanted to add, I think it's really interesting because to have this conversation, I think we have to assume that AI is properly adopted. And, I think we can all agree that 95% metric of ROI is exaggerated, but in terms of like vector wise, kind of potentially the right direction in terms of people throwing money at something which people haven't had the culture shift already. And, I think back to the Upwork research study, I think it was from maybe last year, where, you're having this interesting situation where executives say, oh my God, this is a miracle. My people are going to finish the work in 1/5 the time. I'm going to update our schedules in this way. And then the employees who are not properly trained and also learn that actually they have to check for factuality all the time because the models are not always reliable enough. They end up doing the usual work plus more checking on 1/5 of the schedule and burn out. And so there's also this issue of until we get to that point where the models are reliable enough or people have been upskilled enough, there might be a messy middle. And that's why I just think proper AI literacy, not just throwing it at people with money, is something we need to definitely make sure we deal with.
That's a great point, Chevy. I'm gonna add one more thing to that, Mario. Actually, I was thinking exactly that because our observation is in the early days when I talked to power users, most of them are solopreneurs. basically, solo consultants helping restaurants securing bank loans, or a solo entrepreneur building websites for, local businesses on Shopify. In the past, they would hire people to do a lot of work. Now it's all just, hey, Densmark, do this, do that. So they're fast. Now, organizations, to your point, not only from an evaluation standpoint, but also from security, privacy, procurement, all of these things are processes. Naturally, I'd say it seems like to me, a lot of the users who are, jumping onto AI, benefiting from AI early on, are individuals. And the organizations, they get these pressure from the boardrooms. Yes, we hear about that all the time. But still, there are processes. Like, people are trying to figure out, okay, do we put together a Skunksworks team and go on and then try everything and then adopt it into the organization, or like how should we even make it happen? The successful ones we saw was like completely bottoms up. They just allow their employees to try new things, and essentially in a controlled environment, sandbox environment. And then once this is proven, to your point, the output quality is extremely important. You don't want your staff to spend more time going back and forth with AI than is that they could just do it themselves with less time, right? That's like 996 to 1010 Like, you don't want that. so you actually wanted them to gain more time. So I'd say output quality is important, but beyond that, yeah, they also need to make sure all the compliance frameworks are checked out. But yeah, bottoms up is the way to go. We saw like so many people, they even put budgets behind their staff members. Like, okay, every month, $50 or $100, that's your AI money. Go try things. We applaud to those. That's like fantastic. Yeah, let your members try things.
I love it. Well, yeah, my theory there is there's always been the explore exploit trade-off, right? How do you spend your time exploiting the skills you already have, the resources you already have, or exploring new ones? I'd say when the world is changing so quickly and there are so many awesome AI tools that could legitimately 10 or 100x you, necessarily you should be spending way more time exploring than you are exploiting, like, in this particular moment. And Mario, I love what you said about the messy middle. And that kind of brings me to my next topic of interest, which is maybe this is the messy middle where 996 makes a ton of sense and there's a ton of momentum that way. But I think it really long term is going to bring up a deeper question about the human contract with work. I mean, for decades, or maybe you could say almost entirely, we've tied our ambition and our sense of self-worth to our output, our economic output. But we're entering a world where agents do much of the heavy lifting in terms of like writing the code, drafting the strategy, and managing the logistics. And maybe in the long term, we won't have much economic value in terms of what our output is. So Aristia, turning to you, if this vision becomes the norm where agents handle lots of the execution, like Wen was talking about, what happens to the labor getting displaced? And maybe this leads us into UBI, but would love to hear your thoughts there on kind of the societal side of things.
Yeah, so I don't think that displaced labor disappears. I think it reallocates. And so just to ground a little bit of my background and what kind of how I'm coming at this discussion, Open Research ran a very large randomized control trial of unconditional cash. So it's a proxy for testing UBI, but we couldn't test UBI because it's not universal. And it was 3,000 individuals, 10 counties in Texas, 10 counties in Illinois across 3 years. The treatment group got $1,000 a month for the 3 years. The control group got $50 a month for 3 years. And what we found and how it's relevant to this discussion is that the stability of unconditional cash allows people to pivot and not panic. And we think about how AI is going to change things for low-income Americans. So our group was low-income Americans. And I think another thing, building off of like assumptions and just grounding the discussion, is the sort of like 996 debate versus 4-day work week. A lot of the participants in our study, they're getting like 3 and 4 gig jobs. They're dealing with a lot of instability already, and they're not kind of thinking about like grind culture. They're just trying to put food on the table. But I think it has massive implications for this discussion and how we think about pivoting for everybody instead of panicking. And like the core of that is stability and agency.
Wow.
Anybody have anything to add there?
I really love what Aristia just said, because it sounds like everybody has an entrepreneur living inside themselves. That is just so cool. Yeah.
Literally, our data showed, particularly among groups that are traditionally excluded from entrepreneurship, so Black Americans, women, entrepreneurship rates went way up.
Yeah. I mean, look,
Okay, go ahead, Win.
go ahead, Nick, please.
I was just going to applaud Aristia for doing actual science on this. So yeah,
Mm.
I think the amount of time that I talk to people and discussions are swayed by one anecdote. Like I know someone and their friend's dog's uncle said this. And you're like, wait a minute, their friends. Whereas in this case, you've done what a massive randomized control trial, which is super useful. I think
Yeah,
it's
and thank you, Nick. And like you're like econ royalty. So just to kind of go a little bit in depth on this, randomized control trial, the response rates across all of the 3 years during the cycle and then after are above 90% of both treatment and control. And it was mixed methods. So it's both quantitative and qualitative. So I'll put a link in the chat, but like if you and people are passionate about unconditional cash, UBI, this kind of debate, we've got a ton of rich data to mine.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Wow.
I was just going to say, did you see the Wall Street Journal had this thing on Wall-E yesterday? It's literally, I don't know how many, but I remember watching, I'm 52. I saw the movie Wall-E when it came out, actually. But it's like incredibly prophetic about what happens if computers can run everything from us. And it is like anyway, I'll step back. Sorry, when you were going to say. But
I was just going to say, similarly, I mean, money gives us that freedom. Time also gives us that freedom. Our view is like we spend too much time on busy work today, right? Just too.
Lost one.
Oh, I was really hoping to hear the end of that point.
that's when you need your own AI agent to step in and just finish.
Yeah, that's right. This is when is going to demo the next big thing instantly.
Mario, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think, might be getting one joining again. While he reconnects, I just wanted to add that, there's also this aspect of like AI is forcing there's already a lot of questioning happening around the education system, and now AI is obviously accelerating this. And in a lot of ways, the education system forces you into pathways when you haven't had the time to reflect yet. And when I think about the fact that if we subscribe to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and self-actualization being the ultimate thing, we often tend to think of work as something, it's what I'm supposed to do to get paid. But ultimately, somebody always feels the best when they find their calling and they find purpose and meaning in the world, and they can do the thing and be the best and be recognized for it. And I always think of the top performers I know doing things that matter. It's not because they're getting paid. They're usually taking a pay cut to do it. And so if we create the space for people to discover these things and lean into themselves, I think we might find out that the whole time this association between money and work was actually something like limiting us in like a pretty profound way from education and beyond. So, yeah.
It's a really great point.
We wanted to hear the end of your point.
Yeah, no, I was just echoing what you guys just said. I mean, human beings deserve more freedom, is what we're feeling. And we spend too much time on busy work. If we could get time out of those, we can actually connect with ourselves and think strategically versus just being busy. Being busy by itself is not as meaningful as, to your point, like let's create value, let's be creative, let's do meaningful things, right? So that's just it. We hope AI could do that for us, free us from all the busy work.
Yeah. Okay, Mario, I have another question for you, kind of related to what you were saying, but something I've been thinking a lot about, and actually has been a real topic of interest in Silicon Valley, is this age of abundance and how very quickly AI could enable this era of infinite abundance for everybody, and that we don't need to worry about jobs anymore. But there are inevitably resources that are finite. Land is finite. Attention is certainly maybe the most finite resource. Human attention is the most finite resource we have. So what happens even in an age of abundance, of theoretical abundance, to the value of human attention? And then how do we measure productivity in light of that?
So there's like a few points on that. It's such a good question. On one hand, obviously we've already had, if you can get a human's attention, it's already at a premium, right? The fracturing of attention, the fracking of attention, even getting a few seconds of people's time feels precious now, even in just real life, forget like online or work, whatever. And so obviously it's going to become even more valuable now when you can have this experience where agents are on your behalf, maybe watching things even for you. It becomes even more valuable if you have a real human that's actually still checking. right? So it's going to become even more of a peer. And what I find interesting about it is, yes, there's a finite level of attention. There's also a finite level of meaningful human connection, which is behind this. And if you're a creator and you are creating, if you create poetry, if you create thought pieces, if you do meaningful work, are you really going to be satisfied with the fact that it's being viewed by agents and people are just going to get like the Cliff's notes every time of your work, and your work is never seen by anybody and it's full form? I think that's like a soul shattering thing for anybody who really cares about that thing, that aspect. What I also find interesting is there's the aspect of attention being at a premium on those viewing, but also this notion of the effort that went into work and the result. Is it really going to be meaningful to us when everything is effortlessly created, or are we going to start putting a premium on understanding the process that went into a result? And I think now, you know, you're having this AI cheating crisis, which has started in school, but is now going straight into work as well in the hiring process. It becomes really valuable, I think, this concept of proof of human knowledge, where, you know, it's not going to be enough to see how many likes something have. I'm going to want to know your curiosity and the human element that went into producing the thing that you gave me, because now everybody can just use a machine to churn out the basics. And so I think the second part was you were asking about productivity, or on the on like
Yeah,
for work.
yeah, actually, you were kind of touching on it there. Like, just what will we continue to perceive as valuable in an age of abundance?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that is it's that where you have that extra layer of provenance, the provenance of humanity into an output. There's efficiency, and then there's a point where we have to ask ourselves the big why of what we're doing anything, right? Like, do I do a
Mm,
job to get paid, or do I do it to have meaning? Do I produce to connect to other human beings? Do I just want efficiency, or I'm looking for meaningful conversation? And
mm,
at that point, I think it's kind of like, if we can count on facts as the table stakes, so we get these machines which churn out the expectation, then the
mm,
premium becomes curiosity and connection. So
mm.
yeah.
Amazing. Well, I would really love to dig into that further. I wish we had more time, but I want to jump to the next topic. And let's see. And do this, Nick. This is for you. So you're in the university setting right now. You're probably talking to a lot of students. There's more uncertainty than there's ever been as to what is valuable. What should I be learning? How should I think about my career? Anything you want to talk about there with how AI should be structuring how we think about, if you're in school, what you study and what your career looks like?
Sure. So two thoughts. One is going to kind of build on what Mario said, which is for teaching, and I've heard this a bunch for firms as well. There's a huge concern that AI is doing students' homework. So anyone that has high, I have a high schooler and I teach a lot of undergrads. So now there's a big emphasis on evaluating kids in class. So like open discussion. Because if I think, Mario went and Aristio are my students and they hand in great work, I'm like increasingly nervous. Look, they've done it on AI. So now I say, well, look, fine, you can hand in all the work you like, but we're going to talk about it in class, because that way it can assess whether you really know the content. And also there's been more of an emphasis in exam. It's less clear whether that's good or bad. Personally, I think AI is a fact of life. Students should be allowed to use it, but you still have to assess students and make sure they put in the work. And interestingly, I've spoken to companies. Occasionally folks have mentioned AI is a bit of almost like an enemy of remote, saying that, look, I'm a bit nervous about whether the person that's fully remote is doing the work. When they come in one day a week, it's authentic. I can see the person's physically there. So it is changing interactions. Certainly as a teacher, it's less homework and more class discussion. The other thing, we're talking in the room, a phenomenon I've seen in Stanford is a rapidly rising number of undergrads that are just like in their sophomore or junior year saying, I've been given 3-5 million by a VC. I'm going to go do my AI startup. So I personally know 2 of my advisees have not completed their undergrads and are just exiting into AI startups. Who knows whether that will be good or bad for them in the long run? My colleagues joke we should be nice to them just in case it works out really well. But some of them are going to make it big. Others, we tend to be kind of flexible. If they come back within 2-3 years, they can complete their undergrad degree. But I haven't seen this. I mean, as in, I've been at Stanford for 20 years. In the last 2-3 years, the number of people exiting into startups before graduating is exploding. And yes, the undergrads are also a bit nervous in more standard professions like CS. People that are learning basic coding are getting worried. That's very clearly there. So it's come back to whether I'm optimistic or pessimistic. The fact it's changing so much in an odd way makes me optimistic it's going to affect growth, because it's changing everything around us.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to go off here. Anybody else want to add something about maybe the future of education, how people should be thinking about what they're studying, changes they're seeing in the work environment?
I want to chime in a little bit here. I think building off of what others have said, I think authenticity and the way that both sort of the education model, but then even going back to what Wen said about like solo entrepreneurs and like very small teams being able to really leverage AI now. I'm thinking about how do we build this ladder right now as things are changing rapidly for students that are coming out of education environments into different workforce environments, or just people that are still kind of new to the whole AI game, and then differentiating between like when is it useful to authentically have a human like do it like either with AI or like really like OG by themselves, and when should they be leveraging. And because I work with a lot of people who sort of like have PhDs and sort of like went through the old school model of like foundational knowledge, there is this interesting feedback loop around like disclosing like, oh, I did this by myself or I used AI for it. And it's like changing real time, like the norms around like, it's okay if AI made your idea better, that's not cheating. But getting people sort of from junior levels up to more senior levels, building the same language and fluency around partnership with AI.
Yeah, it's odd, Risky. On that, it's odd that I don't know if anyone here has ever tried to submit a paper recently to say Nature, which is the world's most cited journal, or Science. There's a huge disclaimer about I haven't used AI, and I have the same views. Why is that wrong? Like if AI makes it better, that's
exactly.
fine.
And for how long will that still be wrong? Because we know, based on what we're seeing already, that AI can accelerate scientific discovery. And so like, why are we holding on to these values of like, it's not wrong as long as you're clear around which contributions and then how the partnership with humans and our brilliance and agency was at play.
That's the part I just find fascinating, whether it's school or work, this aspect that we put so much weight on the output for so long that the input was symbolic. And then we wondered why people were treating it transactional, like, oh, I just need to do the output. That's all that matters anyways. And suddenly we really have to focus on that input. What I find interesting is in an education context, we spent, I don't know, 3 decades slowly realizing that the one size fits all system doesn't work. Some people don't do paper tests well. Some people don't do oral exams well. And then suddenly overnight, we're like, well, I guess we got to go back to all of that, back to in person, back to paper, back to oral, as if that never happened. And it's like deeply problematic because I don't think that's the answer probably. So yeah, I just wanted to add a point on that.
Yeah. To that, I'd say from my perspective, look, when I went through grad school at MIT, it was not, I mean, it's important. Knowledge is still important, but knowledge is going to be so accessible. It's really about critical thinking, how to learn how to think, right? Nick mentioned you would still need to bring in your work and talk about it. That is to see if you actually used your head and then can you think. Those are the most important things. And on top of that, I'd say actually in the future, human beings, learn more about human beings are actually going to be more important. In the past, we got so much training on engineering systems. That's cool. Those things are getting so much easier. Building is getting so much easier, but actually having tastes, understand what product would be good for human beings, understand what human beings would want and need, that would become extremely important, even more important. So I'd say for college students, longhand, learn how to think. The knowledge is kind of the raw materials. You just process that, but through that, you learn how to think. On the other hand, how do you learn about hang out with good people. That's like the best time you could do that. We're all gonna get busy afterwards. I'd say having good companionship with each other, that fellowship, that's like the most precious thing. Learn about how human beings work. I wish I had more, time to do that. Other students are much better positioned today. Yeah.
And to briefly second that, having done my engineering degree, I'm deeply envious of the fact that I hope people are realizing now that humanities are very important. Prompting well is your ability to understand the lenses in a camera and the language of style and the language of architecture. And suddenly that matters. When I did my engineering degree, like good luck, like getting people to think that mattered. So I'm deeply envious of the students coming up, which will hopefully get to explore those things.
I wanted to build quickly on something Aristia said with a news thing I saw this week that I was struck by, which is there's something called the Chan Zuckerberg Institute, CZI, which is in San Francisco. And that is Chan and Zuckerberg are given, I think, some enormous amount of money, like maybe $500 million to research. And the news article this week, so I know a bunch of people working there, has a lot of elite scientists, said that they are cutting expenditure on space, on offices, and people are going to focus it more on like GPUs. And it's kind of fascinating take that, and this is just a lot of bio and medical science, that they see actually AI as a big driver going forward of research and innovation. And if that's true, that kind of generates this, I think, Mary, you said, your virtuous cycle. If suddenly AI is good at innovation and it's driving, it hasn't happened yet, but I was pretty struck by CTI is channeling tens of millions basically into AI as what they see as the future of research.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of startups now that are going into that space. A lot of stealth startups raising a lot of money coming out of Stanford doing that. Okay, so a reminder one more time for those in the audience to drop questions if you have any in the chat. We'll be doing that in just a few minutes. We'll do one last short topic here, which is I'm really interested in, in the office right now, we spend a lot of time interacting with humans. Increasingly, though, we're spending more time interacting with AI and various different AI agents, aspects of that. Also, more time interacting with remote people. I work with people all over the world. I see more and more early stage companies leaning into fully remote work. So is the physical office not dead? Will it be in the long term as we spend more and more time working with AI, working with people all over the world? Is the office just a luxury good for that emotional connection and working with humans, we said? Or is it still going to be a productivity requirement going forward? And anybody can field this.
I'll just jump in. I mean, look, on the one hand, all of these technologies are allowing us, including this new wave of AI, to do work completely differently from before. And our vision at GenSpark is to create more freedom so people, do less busy work. But now when it comes to how we human beings work, we love each other. We wanted to be with each other physically. I mean, we're all social animals. There's no question. We just expanded our team in Japan. And yes, we've been doing phone calls. We've been working with AI and human. That is all great. But I just yearned the, opportunity to be there, to be with them, meeting with the clients, shake hands together. Human beings do business with human beings. That's just it. So office, physical presence, connections, absolutely. That is for that. That is how we human beings behave. And I don't think we can change that in our lifespan. But on the other hand, the key point here is it's not about, do you have to work in the office or do you have to work remote? Or it's about more freedom. It's about more freedom. It's about spending less time on inefficient things, spending less time on busy work, spend more time on meaningful connections, on meaningful things. When we meet each other, we don't just sit side by side and typing. That is not good. When we meet each other in the office, we talk to each other, we understand each other, we connect with each other, and we create together. We whiteboard, right? Like that's what we should be doing. We shouldn't be just sitting side by side and just, I'd say the whole point is, in my view, get AI to empower us to have more freedom to do things that is the natural, most human way. And then make all of us feel a lot happier, when we're working, so that it doesn't feel like working. All of us would feel like Jensen Huang. He said, "When I work, I feel like I'm dreaming." We want that.
Yeah. Anybody else have something to add?
Yeah, I'll quickly add, I think it's about community, right? So for me, the physical office can be a form of community if done well and right. And so maybe what we will see is some evolutions of how very local communities, even if we're in virtual environments and distributed workforces, that we have hyper-local communities that can pique our different interests, whether they be professional, intellectual, social, and that's never going to go away. And I would argue that's not a luxury good. And so how we define the office's relationship to community, I'm kind of neutral on. But for me, we're never going to want to be without other people.
Yeah.
I'm happy to pitch. I'm going to build on Aristia's prompt earlier on RCT. So there's a couple of randomized control trials or A/B tests in kind of tech language. In both cases, you generally see that performance is best if people come in some days and are at home some days. So I won't go through the details, but basically, yeah, when you said it perfectly, actually, I should have recorded you. In fact, probably can get a recording after it, but it was so good. It was like, we're social animals, so there's clearly evidence that people do better. Like there's an RCT in Turkey whereby I have a fully remote tech team and they randomize people to come in 1 day a month, which is not a lot. Quit rates halved and productivity went up 10%. And if you look at big tech firms, even folks like Airbnb or Zillow, that are apparently fully remote, they're still meeting like once a month or once every other month. On the other hand, if you're fully, so I don't know if you know Trip.com, it's a big Chinese tech firm. So he randomized from going from 5 days into 3, and that also improved. So the middle is, the sweet spot's kind of the middle. I should say, if you look at the data, if you look at the Fortune 500, almost 80% of them are on hybrid. So hybrid's kind of won, basically. It's like, as you say, when you don't need to come in every day, but there's a huge value for coming in. Like if the 3 of us met Tuesday, Wednesday, we can work happily separately on Thursday, Friday, and next Monday.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I know that a couple of you have to hop off now since we're just at about 9:45. Understand that I am going to switch things over to question and answer. I see that we have plenty of questions coming in, and I will just go ahead and get us kicked off. So let's see. I have the first question here is from Rajesh, which is, I saw an interesting startup working on an idea that everyone should build their own org chart of agents. My question, do you think organizations will evolve to have humans and AI agents in the new org structure? Anybody have thoughts on that?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. Tune in
I'm
on
curious-
our November 20th live JetSpark Live, and you will see it.
Okay.
Happening.
I'm excited to see it. Yeah, shameless plug.
I'll just, yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Wen, you first.
No, sorry. Yeah, that was it. Please, sorry.
Well, I don't have a shameless plug, but as someone that works and runs a very small, very lean nonprofit, I see it as like ultimately agents will be in the org chart, but the accountability for their quality of work, at least for the foreseeable future, will still fall on humans. And there will need to be like clear lines of delineation about like where and how they report up through the org chart. But in order to like sort of like shoot the rocket of speed and innovation, like absolutely agents in the org chart.
Okay, so kind of related to that, I have another question from Aaron, which says, how do you see the size of successful companies changing in the near future? We've seen lean AI teams grow profitably using AI, while smaller companies tend to prevail.
Such an amazing question. I do apologize. I have to jump off after this, but I wanted to quickly share my thoughts. So, yes, what we're seeing is like one person could now do a lot. So yeah, I could share a few stories here, but I mean, it's pretty clear in the past, like what we have to hire like 3-4 people to do the same project. Now the solo entrepreneurs, they're able to just, get it done. But I would say though, what we're also seeing is if individuals' productivity are getting 10x, that is not to say when you get into a group, the whole group couldn't get even 10x or 20x. But naturally, when we adopt technologies, it's just easier and faster for individuals to pick it up and quickly just make a decision and jump onto it. That's a natural thing. So there is a process. The ripple effect takes time to play out. I'm actually super bullish and optimistic about what larger teams, once they absorb and then really internalize the AI capabilities, what they could go and accomplish. I mean, we may be, right now we're living on Earth, we're worrying about things on Earth. I don't know, maybe, once we get to the point everybody's having like a fleet of AI agents running around for you, we can group up, and solve really, really complex problems. We may get onto Mars a lot faster. We may explore the universe a lot quicker. Who knows? Bigger things could happen with bigger groups. I mean, I bet on humanity. I believe in humanity getting enhanced by AI. That's my bet. So yeah.
That's great.
Thank you again for the amazing opportunity.
All right, Wen, thanks. All right.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you,
yes.
Wen.
All right, we'll continue the Q&A. I've got one that's actually pretty related to that. So this comes from Kenneth, which is, how do we successfully persuade a client to adopt our AI-powered solution that they are accustomed to using existing tools with other business partners and maybe hesitant to change their workflow just for our services? If we're talking about new, lean, AI-native organizations, how do we make people move to that faster and see the benefits faster? Mario or Aristu, do you want to hop in on that?
I think it fundamentally, it's so interesting to me that people, there's a lot of hand wringing about the money that's being invested in AI, but then people not
Mm.
actually adopting it sufficiently. And for me, it just comes back to education. I don't think education is hosting a brief, executive training that lasts 1 week and is available only to the executives, but not everybody else. It doesn't mean, parachuting in this thing with like no hand holding and expecting people to care. I
Mm.
think this is why people talk about change management, but I think broadly around AI, there isn't, there hasn't been a really good solution that isn't just based on seeing yet another lecture or video talking at you about AI versus something that makes it easy, accessible, and fun for you to build a lifelong habit around it that then makes any tool that come in more exciting and accessible. Um,
Mm.
you know, yeah. And if we're doing shameless plugs, Chappie, we're launching something around this called Thinking Through AI, so you can look us up
Mm.
after you're interested. But yeah.
Happy,
Yes.
you said earlier, what was it? It was like tinker, or it was like explore versus like
Oh,
leverage.
the explore exploit trade-off.
Yeah, okay.
Mm.
So for me, my answer to this question is I'm not convincing anybody of anything until like we free up enough time for them to
Mm.
explore and see the power for themselves. Like no
Mm.
amount of me being like, trust me, this is a huge unlock is going to convince anybody. So kind of like
Mm.
creating the structure within those kind of like harder to penetrate environments to like really
Mhm.
make the decision makers allocate time to explore and then believe it
Mm.
like themselves with their own eyes.
Mm. It's a great point. Okay, I have
Strongly agree.
I have one more question here, which is from Michael. And he asked, for 20-something-year-olds who are new to the workforce, should they be striving for a 996 type culture, or should they have a more dedicated work-life balance? Thoughts on that? It's a spicy one.
Okay, I love this. And I think that it's what you want. And as long as you're delivering really thoughtful value and contributions for your employer or your manager, it really is like immaterial. That's a personal decision for you. But I think in my experience, and the data's all over the place in this, but I think always leading with like, as a newer colleague and as a junior person on a team, always leading with like, I'm very worried about my work-life balance, probably is not going to resonate in a lot of environments
Mm.
that are surrounded with like really smart, brilliant people. So it's up
Mm.
to you. It's a personal choice, but as long as you're bringing thoughtful contributions and value, I think it doesn't matter.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mario?
I think in general with the whole AI narrative, again, I said it earlier, as we plow forward with all these things, there's always this question of like, why? Like, is being more efficient going to make you happy in the end? Is getting a faster answer going to make you happy? And
Mm.
so, it's not so much how much the time you spend, and it's really what makes you happy. And I think that is a question that you
Mhm.
need to spend more time on before you're worrying about any of those other things. And I'm not saying that's an easy answer, but that
Mm.
often requires more exploration. And I think more exploration has meaning when you have time to explore in unconventional ways, in environments and with people that is not just the same thing grinding every hour of the day.
Mm.
And this is why school is not necessarily where you go to study. It's about the people you meet, and if you do a study exchange or something like that. And so I'm definitely leaning on the side of like making room to live your life, because
Mhm.
you really have to decide, do you work to live or do you live to work? So it's up
Mm.
to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love the way both you put it. And I think it's actually a great way to end it all. Is my key takeaway, at least hearing from this 30 minutes of discussion, is it's a choice. And there's going to be more choice than ever before. And really deeply introspect and find what makes you happy. And there's room for both. I think the one thing you can't do is there's no room for complaining anymore because there's so much choice, there's so much variety. You can find what you're passionate about, and whether that is a dedicated work-life balance or 996, there's plenty of room for passion in both. So that's my takeaway. John, you're hopping up on stage. I would say one last time, thank you so much to the panelists for making this happen. I encourage you to attend an AI Collective event. We're in 30 plus countries globally, so there's plenty of opportunity to do so in person. We also host online events on Rome all the time, so you can find all of our online events. You can see us on Rome plenty more. John, I'm going to hand it to you.